Now, the Saudi-led coalition in Yemen, the war, frankly, the genocide that has been carried out against the Yemeni people for several years now, has reached new levels of inhumanity. Let's not forget the amount of people who have died as direct result of the military conflict, the imperialist expansion of Yemen, funded largely in part by the Saudi government, but also through a lot of Western states, the UK, Canada, and the United States. Many of them also having an interest in the destruction of the rebels inside of Yemen that are trying to maintain its independence. Now, there is, frankly, mass hunger on the verge of mass starvation, the worst cholera outbreak in recent memory. The very inhumanity of the war, and as I previously reported, record numbers of people committing suicide to avoid death by starvation. And yet, the Saudis have found a way to make it even worse. One of the terrible realities is that now Saudi Arabia is being accused of using child soldiers in the conflict, many of them coming from Darfur, taking some of the most poor and impoverished children in the world and making them soldiers because, frankly, what do they have to lose? They're going to get a paycheck that's going to be able to feed them and their families, or nothing at all. So this is the inhumanity of using children to begin with, and then using desperate and outright poverty in order to force them into doing so. Now, these reports have come out, and it was reported in the Washington Post, record numbers of Sudanese soldiers who've returned from Yemen. Upwards of 14,000 Sudanese have been fighting for the Saudi-led coalition, most of them coming from Darfur. Now, the prolonged and bloody war has saw 300,000 people killed, this is referring to Darfur, and 1.2 million people displaced from their homes. Many of the soldiers that are participating in the Saudi-led conflict are coming from Darfur. Some of them reported as being as young as 14 years old. These are very much children being used for conflict, and something that that they are years and years away from being able to understand. It's one thing for an adult to say, well, I don't care, I want to get paid to go in and do this kind of thing, and then they end up dying, and it's, well, you decided that. But to do it with children, not only do they not understand the conflict that they're a part of, they're being forced to out of absolute dire economic coercion to go in and do this. And the Saudis is like, it's really a competition. Who is the worst here? The U.S. war machine or the Yemeni war machine? It just seems like that while the U.S. war machine can kill more people, the Yemeni war machine finds ways to just do it in the most inhumane ways possible. It's mind-blowing how evil these people are. Now, the New York Times interviewed 5 of the fighters returning from Yemen who were confirmed children as young as 14, and at least a fifth of their units. So at least a fifth of the units are being made up of children. That's an astronomical number. Now, 2 of the soldiers said the proportion was closer to 40%. So they got the child soldiers themselves saying that probably upwards of 40% of the units that they were a part of were made up of children. And once again, we have another Saudi crime being exposed by journalists who have largely, to a degree, risked their lives to get this information out into the public. And we have the United States in complete dead silence. We've got the New York Times willing to say something to get a scoop. But are they really going to criticize the system that allows this to continue? No. They're going to keep absolutely quiet on that. They want their benefit for pointing it out, but don't want to assist in any way in stopping it from happening, or even acknowledging the real source of this conflict to begin with, and that being U.S. imperialism. There is no denying that U.S. imperialism is a part of this. This is not just the Saudis. It's just that this has a largely Saudi backing in this case. This is Saudi Arabia carrying out U.S. interests and their own interests as well inside the region, undermining a state that is adamantly independent of the the global order, one of the independent states. I don't know if it's explicitly anti-imperialist, but it's at least doing that. It's at least doing anti-imperialism in this case by simply defending themselves from assault. And once again, the mainstream media, other than the few exceptions, that being the New York Times, are just completely pretending as though this isn't happening. Even U.S. Congress doesn't want to admit it. It took, how many years did it take them to even acknowledge that the Yemeni conflict was even going on to begin with? And then how long did it take them to get around to even denouncing Saudi Arabia for this? And even then, when they finally got around to it, it was nothing more than a punishment for killing Jamal Khashoggi. I mean, the heartless nature, the imperialism that... Che Guevara said that imperialism turns men into beasts, and this is such a prime example of that. The sheer inhuman ways of which capitalism exists, and in this case, it's manifestation of imperialism. It is mind-blowing that Saudi Arabia always finds a way to be even more of a horrible group of human beings. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.